Hi everybody. I got quite a few requests to look at the Warriors defense in the big win against the Brooklyn Nets. I guess on the broadcast they mentioned Triangle-and-2, Box-and-1, and some people are wondering what that meant. So I'm going to look carefully at the defensive schemes that the Warriors were using. So to have the full context for the Box-and-1, you have to go back to the 2009 finals when the Toronto Raptors whipped out this defense against Steph Curry and the mortal remains of the rest of the Warriors. It's not a fun time to remember, but you know that Steph and the Warriors just dragged themselves to the finals, even though Kevin Durant and Klay Thompson and DeMarcus Cousins were injured. And because of the injuries, Nick Nurse knew that pretty much no one else besides Steph was reliable shooting from the outside. So look at this defense that's being played against Steph. You've got Fred VanVleet in Steph's face, and then if Steph gets by VanVleet, then there's this giant wall of Raptors in a box. There's your box. And the other Warriors are basically free to come and go as they choose, as long as they don't try to dunk at the basket. So here the Warriors are just scattered around the court, and the Raptors don't care. They're just staying in their box because they're only trying to key in on Steph Curry. You can't totally blame them. This is the fourth quarter. This is crunch time of Game 2 of the NBA Finals. In the finals. And let's see who's on the court here. We have Steph. We have Draymond, who is not a shooter, as we know. We have Sean Livingston, who I love, but he was running on fumes and he retired right after this series. You have Quinn Cook, who was a fringe NBA player, and 2 years later he's practically out of the league. And you have Andrew Bogut, who's also going to retire in 2 years, and he wasn't even in the NBA. They dragged him out of an Australian league because the Warriors were running out of people they trusted to put on the court. So this is pretty smart play by Nick Nurse to just neutralize Steph in this way. Just make the whole defense pointed at him. And actually, in some ways, the most amazing stat in this whole thing is that the Warriors are going to win this game. That's just amazing. That the shambling remains of the Warriors dynasty was able to bring this series to 6 games, and in fact they had a shot at the buzzer of game 6 to bring it to game 7, so that's pretty amazing. Anyway, once Steph got back last season, teams started running Box-and-1 against him, and it was pretty annoying, and the Warriors had to evolve their offense to handle that. But now, this season, the Warriors have started running Box-and-1 at other star players. Finally, sweet revenge served cold, right? So we've already done videos of them running Box-and-1 against Trae Young and Zach LaVine and Terry Rozier. And now we'll see the various defenses that they threw against the Brooklyn Nets. The Warriors are scrambling in transition defense. KD's coming this way, so GP2 has to be the one to pick him up. Unfortunately, Bjelica is trailing here, which means that it's his job to pick up Harden, which is definitely not what the Warriors want. But, you know, when it's transition like this, you just guard who you can and just try to fix it later. And you can see GP2 is pointing, saying, hey, Belly, you have to cover Harden. And there's going to be waving, lots of pointing and waving. Bjelica's pointing. I kind of think Bjelica's saying, wait, I thought you should take Harden. But then he realizes, okay, no, I've got to be on the island with Harden. So Harden pulls back in order to properly solidify this isolation on Bjelica. Everything's calmed down. No one's passing out to the corner. Otto Porter and Steph seem to be having a discussion about what kind of formation they should be using. I think Otto Porter is pointing. And then Harden is locking in this ISO. And then the Warriors start forming this box. You see there's people in this 2x2 zone, and so they are playing what looks like a box and 1 on James Harden. So the one is that there's man-to-man coverage there, but behind the man there's 4 defenders ready to collapse, and each one of these is guarding a certain territory. Harden sees that Bjelica is guarding him, so he's kind of toast, except that he's got all of his buddies behind him. So Harden could, in theory, just blow by Bjelica, force help to come from one of the corners, and then kick out to one of these spot-up shooters. But I don't think he really wants to kick out to this side of the court. and probably GP2 is not going to leave Durant. So Harden says, well, I'll just step back and take this shot. That's about a foot short. Good rebound, Steph. Here's another good example. You can see that it's a zone because you can see what the matchups are. Andre's guarding the corner, GP2 is guarding this ball handler. They are the two chasers, so that's the two in Triangle-and-2. Otto Porter Jr. just covering nobody over there. So he's guarding this whole territory. Steph is guarding this territory. Bielitsa is guarding this territory, so they form a triangle zone. If an attacker enters your territory, then you're responsible for them. This guy Bembry is covered by nobody. There's all kinds of talking. See, Steph is pointing over here, Otto Porter's pointing. I think they're talking about who has this man, in case the ball swings over here. These are the kinds of coordinations that you have to do when you're playing a zone, and you have to coordinate when people overload your part of the territory. Patty Mills attacking. I think he's wondering what the heck is going on. What is Otto Porter doing here? This must be some kind of zone. What do we do about this? So he just does a dribble handoff to KD. Again, you can tell something about the nature of the zone because GP2 is staying close to Mills, Iguodala is staying close to Durant. No one seems to care that much where Bembry goes. He's just wandering through the zone, and Bielitsa marked him for a little bit, and now Steph is marking him. This corner of the triangle is getting ready for if KD beats Andre. So the Nets are trying to counter this zone. So this guy is supposed to rotate when KD blows by the top of the triangle, which is Steph, but the Nets send Bembry to screen. So this is an inside screen, so that means KD should be able to get through the middle and just dunk this. The only thing saving them is whether Andre Iguodala can harass KD enough to stop this from happening. And look at that. Andre just knocks it free. Oh, it's a foul. It looked pretty good though. Good idea. Steph does not agree. Okay, next quarter, you see the Nets are trying another thing to counter the zone. Here's Harden. He's begging for Bembry to give him the ball because he wants to attack fast. Because look, the Warriors aren't set, right? They're just scrambling around trying to get into position. Steph is all the way over here. So Harden wants to just attack before the zone can set up. So the zone's not set, right? It's kind of a blob. And so Harden just goes fast. He thinks, I can beat OPJ off the dribble, no problem. And he does, but then he also beats him in the face, and that's a foul. The Warriors do keep switching it up, so a couple plays later, they're now in man-to-man again. You see everyone is guarding a player. So it's good that the Warriors keep switching it up because if you play the same defense the whole time, then eventually the Nets are going to experiment and figure out something that works against it. So here's another high pick and roll. Harden goes around, but Steph, of all things, he's playing drop on Harden, which is pretty interesting. I guess they're counting on him that if Harden tries to pull up, that Steph is quick enough that he can contest, and that just like with bigs, by giving Steph a little bit of runway, he can keep up if Harden tries to blow by him. So I think that's pretty interesting. And everybody else seems to be in man-to-man. See, these people are covered. Harden tries to go downhill on Steph. Harden going for his rip-through move where he just holds the ball and tries to pull it up through your arm. It's one of those annoying plays where it's hard to outlaw it by rule, but you just know it's skanky. So I think Steph just very quickly gets his arm up just enough, fast enough that the refs don't call this rip-through. But Harden does have half a step on Steph. In the modern NBA, the weak low man, so the person on the other side of the ball, weak, and low, the person closest to the basket, is the one who needs to rotate to stop the drive. And then this person will have to zone the two players spacing on the backside. So here comes Kuminga. Can he make the rotation in time? Yowza! That was a spectacular block. And I love the fact that he blocked it straight to Otto Porter Jr. None of this spiking it into the stand stuff. It's just really inefficient. It's like a half turnover. Oh look, Harden did end up getting Steph with this rip through. Right, so Steph, it feels like he's in decent defensive position, although he is backing up. And Harden pulls the ball and his arms up through Steph's arm to try to create a cheap foul. The refs don't call that. Bless you, referees. And Steph lifts his arm out of the way. Harden thinks, oh, I've got a half step. I can make this layup. And then you hear the Superman music. Boink. Harden's just sizing up Damion Lee. So for all intents and purposes, this is now a box-and-1, because you definitely have Damion Lee guarding one-on-one here. You've got this box formed, so whether it's a zone or people helping off of their defenders, either way, if James Harden goes in here, there's going to be all kinds of help collapsing on him. So I think we can call this a box-and-1. Harden sizing it up, gets by Damion Lee, the annoying rip through. Here's the weak side low man, Otto Porter Jr. rotating. So this is a very standard NBA defense. That's not a zone exactly. Andre will have to zone these two guys in the back. And Harden. Jeez, every time Harden does that cheap rip through, people all start waving their hands going, what? How could you not give us that cheap foul? And Harden goes for a pretty tricky floater. And they do get the cheap foul. Durant saying, keep it up, James. They can't stop you from getting these cheap fouls. Okay, Steph pushing it ahead. Okay. This is not good for the Nets. I think Steph left someone behind back there in the paint, so that's our 5 Nets. And I'm pretty sure this is not a net. This is one of the Warriors who's leaked out. Okay, and that Warrior is Draymond Green. Oh, and come on, Steph. What are you doing here? Look at this. You think you're Barishnikov? Look at that. He throws the pass. He looks away from the pass. Okay, I think it's pretty clear this is going to be at least a layup, if not a dunk. But I want to see what Steph's doing here. He's getting all balletic. Okay, he's you know how Steph sometimes shoots and then turns away? He's doing that to Draymond's dunk, which, to be fair, like, this would take a catastrophe for Draymond to not score here, so I want to just see what Steph's up to. He's pointing. Okay, this is the Nets bench, so the Warriors bench is down there. He's pointing at the Warriors bench. He's like celebrating with the Warriors bench, pointing. I think he's saying, hey man, you see that awesome read I made? You see my vision? I'm going to the People's Court here, and the People's Court says 1 goggles, 2 goggles awarded. All right, polite clapping from Kuminga here. Juanito doing something kind of bongo drumish with his hands. Okay, so by majority vote of the People's Court, that was declared a tasty dime.